Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 DFS live stream out there for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Gonna break down everything you need to know for tomorrow to go out there, build some GPP lineups, enter a few prop slips, and go out there and tackle all of your exposure. But first off, just hoping all of you guys are having a solid Thursday night and ready to get after it for all of tomorrow's action. We got Ryan down there, Zach, who's talking about the geriatric debate tonight. Yeah, I won't be watching a single second of that clown show. So yeah, I'm sure I'll see some clips out there on Twitter. But hey, yeah, if you're watching that, just take a sip anytime somebody says anything stupid. So let's get after it. We got Steven down there, Kevin as well. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic night and are ready to get after it. Like I said, before we dive into the weeds, truly hop into things, just want to mention our presenting sponsor for this live stream. That, of course, would be our friends over there at the Ship It Nation, which are your source for all of your DFS needs. So whether it's PGA DFS, like we're talking here, they've got projections for main slate and showdown for every single day, or for a variety of different other sports. They're the resource to go out there and check out. Right on here, we talk about football when that comes along. You guys know about all the golf content, but there's plenty of other DFS sports to go out there and play. We're talking basketball, UFC, football when that comes along. They cover that as well. All of that is a part of the Ship It Nation. And if you're looking for that one-stop shop, they are the best resource in the industry. You're not going to get price gouged over there. They've got dedicated experts for all their given sports. You got projections, ownership, process tools over there. So just DFS education that they're huge on with the Ship It Nation. And of course, the Shiptimizer. So always improving. Great guys over there with Hoop and Tambo. And stoked to have them as the sponsor for this live stream. So let's hop into things now. Let's change our focus from Ship It, who's great over there. And now try and take a look at this round 2 slate. And overall for round 1, there wasn't that much to note. So if we take a look at the scoring between the two waves, it quote unquote played easier in the PM, but all of that was due to the weather. You had higher winds in the morning than the afternoon, which wasn't really in a lot of the forecast. A lot of the late forecast, I woke up before lock and some of the later ones did say that it was going to get kind of gusty towards 9, 10 a.m., but a lot of them weren't calling for higher sustained winds. So I wasn't expecting the morning to play harder than the afternoon, but it's not like I had any sort of showdown exposure for today. So it's not like it ended up negatively impacting me, but it was at least worth noting out there for round 2. Now, I don't think we're going to get that same kind of effect, but I do think it's going to play relatively flat. If we take a look at this Friday forecast, it looks like a pretty similar forecast to round 1. Now, the caveat, I guess the added change here is that they're not calling for it to be gustier in the morning. You can see the sustained winds are pretty much the exact same the entire day. You can see there at, dawn over there. Very beginning of the day, it's going to be very calm. But then towards the very end of the day, when they're finishing up play, it's also going to be very calm over there in Detroit. So if you're one of the super early starters, maybe you could get a slight advantage going out there the first hour and a half of play. If you're one of the super late tee times, maybe your last, hour and a half of play, you go out there and you have some nutted conditions. But outside of the very extremes, when it comes to the tee times, I don't think there's any sort of weather edge to garner here. And frankly, a lot of your super early starters and especially a lot of your super late starters tomorrow are some of the worst golfers in the field. So I don't think you would want to go out there and stack those kind of tee times. More so, I see this playing more straight up. So while today did favor the PM wave, I think a lot of that was because of the higher winds in the morning. And I meant to point this out before, but here on the Data Golf site, they do have the observed wind gusts over there. And you can see in the morning, it was a little bit beefier than what we had in the afternoon. So I think that was the cause for the difference in scoring. And when we take a look at this forecast out here for Friday, I don't think it really leans one way or the other. Now let's take a look at a few other models just to make sure we're doing this to completion here. So next up, we've got this HR DPS model, which is also very flat. Now maybe slightly lower winds overall than what we had on the HRRR model. But once again, not really much of a difference between the morning and the afternoon. This NEM model is much of the same. I would say that this NEM model might actually call for some spicy morning winds. So that would be kind of similar to what we had for today, but that's the one model that's really saying that. If we take a look at this Medio Blue model, it is pretty much flat the entire time. This Icon model is much of the same. If anything, maybe slightly higher winds there towards the middle of the day. between like 12 and 2 p.m. local. GFS model is, again, much of the same. A little bit of a pocket of wind coming in towards the middle of the day there, but that is equally shared between the AM and the PM wave. So pretty much every model except for the NEM model is calling for this thing to be a pretty much a 50-50 split. So if you were looking to try and play just one wave or the other, which can be kind of useful out there from a showdown slate from time to time, you're not really going to get that this time around. I think it's much more of a game theory slate. It's about trying to find some low-owned gems to go out there and play in lineups, as opposed to trying to go out there and lock in a weather edge. So we're going to circle back to this when we talk about props. This wind direction, I think, is going to have a huge impact on play. So part of that is because of what Cam Young said in his interview today, but I'll share that for when it's a little bit more pertinent towards the prop section of this live stream. So what I'm going to do now is, we've talked about the weather, is now shift our focus over towards the DFS side of things. So we're going to go through the DraftKings Showdown slate and how I'm approaching it over here for Friday. And without a big weather edge, like I mentioned, it's mostly a game theory slate. We're going to want to go out there and try and fade some chalk. We're going to try and take some stands on players that aren't getting an over amount of attention, right? Guys that aren't going to be too popular out there in lineups are the guys that I'm going to be targeting for tomorrow. And the predictable nature of round 2, round 3 Showdown ownership is always on the top end of the board. So if you're new to Showdown, maybe you don't know this. If you've been playing Showdown for more than maybe a week or two, you definitely have already noticed this. But the top end guys, the guys that shot like 3, 4, 5, even better under par today, like 6, 7, like you had with Akshay Bhatia, are the players that are getting all the ownership. In fact, your highest owned player for round 2 Showdown is Akshay Bhatia, which you probably could have guessed if I had you guys guess the top owned player. But outside of that, the rest of the ownership is also very correlated to the leaderboard. So whether it's your top end guys like a Cam Young, Aaron Rye, also well over 20% ownership, but even your cheaper guys are very correlated to where they are in the leaderboard. So guys like Ben Griffin at inflated ownership, Nick Dunlap, especially, right, with his super solid round. Eric Cole, you could throw into that. Taylor Montgomery, Michael Kim, both at the -7 score, are all about 4 or 5 times higher owned than they otherwise would be if it weren't have been for the round 1 performance. And if there's one piece of advice I could give you, especially for round 2 Showdown, but this same thing would apply out there to round 3 Showdown, is not to overreact to what we've seen so far in the event. A long-term sample size, a long-term idea of a player's birdie or better percentage is a much better barometer of what to expect for tomorrow than what you saw out there for today. Now, is it great to see ball striking, guys that went out there, gained off the tee, gained with the approach play? Yes, that's great to see. That's always an added bonus. However, that is not the end-all be-all. And the guys that played well in round 1 are going to get all of that steam. And up top, it's not as drastic. Ownership's a little bit more spread out in that 9 and 10K range. But once you get down into the 8K and especially that 6, 7K range, ownership gets extremely polarized. The guys that are towards the top of the leaderboard are sometimes 4 or 5 times higher owned than some of the guys around them, as opposed to the guys that are, kind of just spun their wheels round 1. They'll normally be about average ownership, somewhere around there. And the guys that sucked round 1, no one will play them out there for round 2. I'm not saying you have to play guys that all sucked round 1, but the guys that are just kind of played okay, right? Maybe shot between even and -2, are, in my opinion, some of the best plays out there for round 2 Showdown. They aren't going to get all of the steam of those top end players, and they still at least kept the train on the tracks. Like, they didn't have a complete derailment out there for the first round. Now, Tom Kim, the first play we're going to get to here in a minute, kind of derailed himself a bit, right? He shot over par, is going to have a hard time making the cut, is likely going to need a -4, probably at least -5 round to go out there and make the weekend. But that's still possible for Tom Kim. And frankly, we don't care if he makes the cut, right? He could shoot. I mean, to be an optimal play, we're going to need him to probably make the cut because for Tom Kim at 10,900, he's probably going to have to shoot -5, -6 at least to get to the optimal lineup. But he's certainly capable of doing so. But he's one of the rare examples of a guy that I'll play that just really didn't have it for round 1. There are a few others that we're going to talk up on this live stream, but you don't have to take a stance like that, right? Just don't play the guys that are all in the top 5, top 10. You can mix in a few of them, 1 or 2 of those guys that played well round 1. They're going to be chalky. Just know that before you take them in lineups. However, right, don't be taking only those kind of players. I mean, round 4 Showdown, I'm always harping on that, but even for rounds 2 and 3. Let's catch up on chat, though, and then talk through some of these top-end plays. So what's going on? Philly, we got Frank down there as well. Curtis, hopefully you guys are having a solid day. Yeah, he went off today. It was pretty sweet. You got Jack and Coke, regular Coke for me right here, but that's pretty awesome. Chalky Darling of the Week, Maverick for a bounce back. You could look for that. I like a lot of those kind of players, right? The guys that kind of struggled round one that were chalky. You could talk about Pendrith with that too, right? Pendrith only shot like 2 under par out there round one. Plenty of those guys are making my lineups. Tom Kim's a great example too, right? A lot of people, he was your chalkiest player of the week. He shot +1. I'll take him out there for round two. So for sure. My model is doing pretty dang good, sir. So far, we'll have to see by the end of the week. Only one round, right? What's going on, Anthony? Said Svensson and McNeely bounce back. I think so. Both putted miserably. And McNeely, that is especially surprising from him because he's one of the best putters on tour. So if his issue was the flat stick, which it was today, there are a few guys that had issues with the flat stick that I'm playing. 100% get back to him. Pendrith, too. Pendrith, by the way, ball striking. I was tracking him today because I faded him on props. So I had to track his performance. He was hitting a lot of shots to 10, 15 feet. And as somebody that had his over on strokes, I was sweating all of those putts, and he made almost none of them out there for the day. So Pendrith due for a bounce back. You can say the same thing about those two players. You should have listened with Tom Kim. You've got him at 60%. Yeah, I actually played him myself, Phil. So I still have some, but yeah, I didn't play 60%. That's for sure. I played a lot of Cam Young this week and a lot of Min Woo Lee as well, obviously, because he's a core play for me. What's going on, Kep? You got Tom Kim or Mav McNeely. I'd go for both of them. I like both of them. Your boy Michael is looking good. Michael who? Michael Block's not in the field, right? So maybe Michael Kim you're talking about. Top bounce back golfer, one of those two, Tom Kim or McNeely. And Steven says to hit the like button. You heard the guy. Go out there and do so, guys. I hate going out there and asking for it, but hey, when somebody reminds me down in chats, perfect time to do so. So go ahead, smash a like button if you guys haven't already, and let's talk about some of these plays. So we're going to talk about some players that I'm getting to, but this is not a stream where I'm just giving you guys plays. That's never the idea with these live streams. Now, I'm going to give you some options that I'm playing myself, right? You can choose to tail them if you'd like to. You can choose to fade all of them if you'd like to as well. The point is to give you an idea of why and the thought process behind that, right? To give you a perspective into my process and what I'm going about. So Tom Kim, Pendrith, I've already kind of spilled the beans on these two players. Both of them just could not buy a putt for their life today. Now, Tom Kim's ball striking was also pretty shaky. Now, Pendrith, the reason why he actually shot under par is the ball striking was there. The guy was just allergic to making any 10 to 20 footers. So I really like the Pendrith play. I think he's probably my top play on the slate if I had to just, kind of take it down to one player. So I know we had a few people asking about like my favorite bounce back. It's probably Pendrith, but I still like Tom Kim as well. He was your chalkiest play heading into the week. He was your number one modeling play on a lot of people's models. Wasn't my number one model play, but you had a lot of other guys that had him as their number one play. Why not take them out there for round two? I've got him at about 17.8% ownership, which I guess if you're comparing them to the guys on here like Pendrith or McIntyre at 10.4%, you might think that's high ownership, but it's really not in comparison to the other guys at the top. I've got Cam Young at well over 25%. I've got Min Woo over 22% ownership. Noren is in that same kind of range as Tom Kim. So he would also be a pretty reasonable option up top if you're looking to get a little bit different. But Akshay's 30%. I've got Aaron Rye at like 25% ownership. So this 17, 18% number that we're getting on Tom Kim, it's just people playing the long-term talent, right? People having a brain, knowing that he's still probably the most talented player in this field, and taking him out there in their lineup. So I wouldn't overreact to the single round sample, and I think he's a perfect example of be overlooking what we saw today and just hoping that we get back to what we've seen the last month from Tom Kim. Taylor Pendrith, I guess I'll expand on it a little bit more. His ownership is still there, so I've still got him at just under 20%, which is kind of disappointing because he didn't have his best stuff, but people are still going to play the top end of the board. So where you start to see the ownership get more spread out, more polarized, as I was talking about before, is when we get a little bit further down in the pricing. So I still like Taylor Pendrith, but just know you're not going to get a ton of leverage on that spot, as I'm still expecting him to be over 15%. I think in higher dollar single entries, I think in some of your smaller field GPPs, he might be slightly lower owned, like maybe closer to 15%. But in your lotteries, I still think he's going to get quite a bit of steam out there, especially with the fact that he's going off early. I think enough people know about the morning conditions usually being favorable, and the fact that he just bull striked the ever-living heck out of it today. Next up, we got Robert McIntyre. If you're looking for somebody that striped the living heck out of it, but just couldn't make a putt, well, Robert McIntyre's your guy. He hit 14 of his 18 greens, only missed 4 on the round, and a lot of his misses were very reasonable and up and downs that he was able to convert on. Just couldn't make anything from 5 to 15 feet. And just like Taylor Pendrith, I counted at least 5, maybe even close to like 7, 8 putts that he had that were in that 15-foot or in zone, and he just could not convert today. So a guy that I faded for main slate, which I feel pretty decent about that at this stage, but at the same time at $8,700, the kind of player for round 2 that I'm not counting on him just not making putts again. Like I kind of see the fact that today I lucked out a little bit, right, in my main slate lineups, because he could have easily shot -5, -6. This guy could have easily been up there in the top 5, and he hasn't really done that so far. So I'll try and get a little bit of putting regression for round 2. Michael Thorbjornsen, I've got him at 7.5% ownership. The main reason for that is almost everyone in this 8K range played well, with the exception of McIntyre, who I have at about 10% ownership. Everyone else like shot -3 or -4 or better. You got to go the whole way down to Ryan Fox until you find someone that isn't in that range. So not everyone can be chalkier, right? Not everyone can be getting all the attention. So I've got EVR at higher ownership. I've got guys like Chris Kirk with his course history now at higher ownership than Thorbjornsen. I do think that some of your, hardcore golf fans, some of your people that are watching live streams like this, that are doing their research week in and week out, are probably familiar with Thor and aren't going to fade him at single-digit ownership. But I do think your casual players that probably have no idea who the heck this guy is might not use them out there for your round 2 showdown lineup. So I think that in the higher dollar contest, the single entry contest, you're going to see a higher ownership number out here on Thor. But in your lotteries, where you have a lot of casuals playing, you might even be sub 10%, like I have here for a projection. Down here in the 7K range, I'm playing some Højgaard, who, of course, I loved heading into the main slate this week. I wouldn't say he disappointed with the -1 round. I mean, truth be told, that was about the field average. So I think it'd be harsh to say that he had a horrible day. At the same time, though, he didn't have that sexy, flashy round that is going to get a lot of people playing you. So I've got him at sub 10% ownership and somebody that I'll play there. Bo Hostler, $7,500, another -1 score, which, again, isn't going to draw a lot of eyes, but is still decent. He kept the train on the tracks, and I've got him at sub 5%. And with Bo, you're getting a player with a lot of upside. He's a very streaky player. We've seen him in the first-round leader conversation a handful of times already here in 2024, and he's broken the slate for Showdown probably close to 10 times already this year. So he's the kind of player that usually either has it or doesn't. Round 1, it was a little bit of a different story, right? Had that average round. We'll have to see what direction it goes in round 2. Could go up, could, of course, be a little bit of a stinker too. That would not surprise me from Bo Hostler. Down here in the lower end of the 7s, a Jake Knapp, a Cameron Champ standout. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of group these two players together because first off, they have a similar type of skill set and they're low owned. So they fit the same kind of mold for me where they're high upside players because of their birdie or better potential. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more when we go through props, but the wind direction for round 2 is going to favor the Bombers. The wind direction for round 1 was into the wind in all 4 par 4s, on par 5s, I should say, sorry, misspoke there. All 4 of the par 5s, which drastically impacted scoring, right? Typically, it's 1.5, 2, sometimes even 2.5 strokes under par around the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And that's even before we have the cut line. Today, it was only 1.1 under par. Cameron Young, in his interview afterwards, and honestly, I don't think I would have caught this unless he had mentioned it, said that all of those holes were playing into the wind. And for power players like himself, he wasn't able to take advantage of those holes like he typically would have, which I think in general is going to make scoring better tomorrow. So if you thought scores were low today, which they were decently low, but they're going to get even lower out there from round 2. But I think it makes Bombers like a Cam Champ and Jake Knapp that really make their hay on these par 5s better plays for round 2. So this is really going to impact props, the wind direction stuff. That was that secret factor that I was talking about before with the weather. But it's not really that secret, right? Cam Young spilled the beans out there in his interview. But yeah, these two players are guys that I think get a little bit of a bump there. And in general, guys that I'd consider taking anyways. Knapp was chalkier out there for main slate, but after a -2 round, I don't have getting that much steam. I have him at about average ownership for that range. And as somebody that was popular heading into the week, right, he's an excellent play. There's a reason why people took him heading into their main slate lineups. Same thing with Cam Champ. He wasn't really chalk getting into this week, but he's certainly not popular at about 2% projected ownership. Down here in the 7K range, I've got Luke List in here as well. I guess we probably could have grouped him in with the other two and just made it a trio because he's another bomber that I'm taking at low ownership. The tee times don't really matter. You can see, right, Nap, guys like Cameron Champ are going off in the morning. Luke List is a PM tee time. So I guess if you're trying to stack a few lineups, run some correlation out there for round two, just kind of hope that one wave gets the better side of things. You can kind of distribute them that way. But again, I'm not worried about that. Worried about the weather that much out there with my lineups. Then the last guy we're going to talk about here, at least for the plays here in the live stream, there are plenty more that I'm taking over there on the Patreon page. So check out the spreadsheet over there for my full player pool for tomorrow. But it's Sam Ryder, who had a horrendous round. I mean, he shot +2, which at the Rocket Mortgage Classic is pretty much inexcusable when it comes to the score. But he's truly, truly unowned. No one's going to use him out there for round two. I've got him at 0.6% ownership. And I would say if you're 150 maxing, you're going to have a few guys like this in your player pool. You're going to have to at least to take a double spend up lineup. If you want to go Tom Kim as your first man in, well, you're probably going to have a 6K player to make that work. If you don't, you're going to have to be hyper balanced in the 7K range outside of Tom Kim. And that's not really the kind of build that I love going with for Showdown. So to make my Tom Kim lineups work, I'm going to have to take a few cheaper options. And Sam Ryder's the type of player that I'll go with. The idea with Sam Ryder is that he's a very streaky player. He's a kind of a hit or miss kind of option. He's a streaky approach player. He's also a very streaky putter, the kind of guy that can lose 4 strokes on the greens or gain 4 strokes on the greens the next day. In round one, I mean, wasn't great. I mean, normally you like to play him when he's in form, but I know the long-term birdie or better upside, and I know the long-term Showdown upside as well. So there are a few guys that I just love playing in Showdown. They're kind of like my guys that I play a lot more than others out there in this format. Sam Ryder would be one of them. Peter Malnati is another one of those players. A Davis Riley is typically one of those players. And a Matt Wallace would be as well. Benny Ann would be one of those players. And what all of them have in common is they're high birdie or better percentage players. They're guys that typically outscore their placement when it comes to their birdie or better upside. So, for example, Jake Knapp. Who else? Nick Dunlop is typically one of those players where he won't always finish top 10, but he'll make a shit ton of birdies. That's what I like out there for Showdown. So Sam Ryder fits that kind of format. And there are a lot of guys I think that fit that description. They might have had shitty form round one. They might have had slightly better form with like a -1, -2 round. It's more so the long-term birdie or better upside that I'm looking for. So that's it for all the plays that I wanted to go through. I'm going to catch up on any specific questions down in chat. And then afterwards, we're going to talk through props. So get down and throw any questions down in chat that you guys have for DFS. And then we'll talk through props afterwards. Did I end up finding out if the guy starting at 10 had an advantage? I would look through it, Sam, and I didn't see anything. So I guess you can look through the data and let me know if you see anything, but I did not. And I looked for it. I remembered your comment from last night. You're saying that Ricky turns into Tiger every time he gets up here? I don't think so. Can he carry it for rounds 2, 3, and 4? Highly unlikely, right? He did it last year and he won the event. So, I don't think it's a hot take to say that he's probably not going to win. I mean, his outright odds are probably like 10, 15 to 1, maybe worse at this stage. But yeah, he likes the golf course. So does Nate Lashley, right? Nate Lashley won the first ever Rocket Mortgage Classic and then makes a hole-in-one on his second hole today, which is crazy. You're going to live and die based on McIntyre. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I hope he plays well for my round 2 Showdown lineups, but my main slate exposure kind of hopes he misses the cut. So we'll have to see. I think him making the cut and shooting a good score would be the best of both worlds, right? Because, it's not the end of the world for my main slate, and then you get your guys through. So I'll be rooting for him, that's for sure. Is McNeely the nuts? I think he's an option. We'll have to see if he's the nuts. Are people still sleeping on Yuan? I don't know if they're going to be sleeping on him anymore after his round 1 performance. I mean, anytime you shoot someone like -4, -5, you're going to get some attention. But yeah, probably not a bunch of people using them. Thoughts on Jaeger bombs? So if you like the bounce back with Jaeger, sorry, I just got ahead of myself. Sorry. If you like the bounce back with Pendrith or McNeely, then you probably like the bounce back with Steven Yeager. He played significantly worse than guys like McNeely or Pendrith, but I don't worry about that all that much, right? 18-hole sample size. Crazy shit happens out there in this sport. We've seen guys like that shoot 3-4 over par, then the next day be the absolute nuts out there for Showdown. So I like them for sure. Who has the edge tomorrow, morning or afternoon? I don't think either side's going to get a big advantage, at least based on the forecast that we have. Thank you for the props during the day. Much appreciated. Of course, Metro. I'm always keeping an eye on the board, trying to keep an eye on things. All right, let's go to the prop side. That's all I've got for DFS, guys. So we're going to go ahead, shift our focus to props now, which for round 2, I think is going to have a slightly different focus. So scoring round 1 was harder than we're used to seeing, which I think is going to make some people out there overreact. And in fact, this afternoon, I kind of did that myself. I took some fades this afternoon on guys that I probably shouldn't have faded. For example, Akshay, who shot like -8. So that one didn't work out all that well for my prop exposure. But I'm not going to be doing that for round 2, especially after hearing what Cam Young had to say. When he mentioned about the weather direction and the fact that all the par 5s were in, it had me thinking, well, what's the wind direction out there for tomorrow? And it's the exact opposite, right? All the par 5s are going to be playing downwind. So this scoring average, I think even before the cut line, might get twice as good. It might play 2 strokes under par out there tomorrow. Is going to have a drastic impact. Hole 4 is going to be at least 0.3 shots easier. And I think even these other ones that played about 0.4 strokes under par, so like 7, 14, and 17, might even play like 0.15 to 0.2 2 strokes easier. So in general, this golf course was built for the wind that they're going to see tomorrow, and it makes it a whole lot more playable. So I'm incorporating that into some of my prop analysis. So we can look at these averages, which once again, 1.1 under par about for the field scoring average. Birdie average went down to about 3.8 per round. Bogey average went up to about 2.5 per round. But I don't think it's going to look like this for round 2. I think your birdie average will be well over 4 per round. I think your bogey average is likely going to go down to like 2.3, maybe 2.4 per round. Fairways, greens, I'm not sure are going to move as much, right? Like a lot of the pin locations were what made things difficult. Also, the wind direction on the par 5s made them slightly less scoreable. I don't think you're necessarily going to see those bottom 2 metrics change all that much, is they don't really have to do with the changes that we were talking about. But the birdies and bogeys are definitely going to sway a little bit there. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at the boards, because it's going to have an impact on how I'm looking at things. So let me refresh Prize Picks, see if they have anything posted. And then I want to circle back and take a look at some of the like Draftkings and FanDuel kind of sites. So they didn't have stuff posted before, but I'm hoping that they've came along and posted. So we got strokes on Draftkings. Let's see. Let's look at Caesars. So Caesars has a whole bunch of shit posted. Okay, good stuff. And then has FanDuel come along as well. That'd be fantastic if we could get all 3. And yeah, look at that. We got all 3 posted. So we're going to have some sportsbook odds to compare to and try and find some value here. So what I was looking at first were some unders on strokes. And the issue is I think people are going to overreact. I think that you're going to see people taking overs over here in Underdog, like especially a lot of your bettors that don't do enough research. Like your guys that just box score watch, look at the day before and go, oh, this guy shot -3. He's going to shoot -3 for -2. Like the complete deadbeat morons when it comes to their analysis. And just for evidence of that, Cam Young got bumped from 67.5 to 68 strokes. Now, I'm not telling you that I think he was value for an under at 67.5, but if he's getting bumped up, there's probably a lot more action that's going to come in on some overs here. So Underdog might actually be a spot that I sit back and wait and just kind of see where the board moves, because I'm on the complete opposite side of things where I think it's going to play significantly easier for the next round. But I guess before we dabble on some action, let me see what they have some of the guys at over here. So Akshay is at 69.5 on the sportsbook, which I don't agree with this. I think that it's going to play easier than what we saw for today. And guys like Akshay Minwoo, I'd probably have it 68.5 strokes. Now, if I was a sportsbook, I'd probably have him at 68.5 and juiced a little over, like maybe -135. But I certainly wouldn't have him at 69.5 strokes. So I kind of wish I had access to DraftKings here. I could go out there and just bet some of these straight up, because these -135s on the 69.5s like seem like pretty sweet spots. So we still don't have a board on Prize Picks. I've been kind of hoping that we'd get that to compare to. I am thinking that they will probably post them higher, though, kind of like we see on the sports books. So the unders on Underdog might not be the move, especially if we're going to get some of these to bump up. Like I think we are. Like let's see if McIntyre moved. Looked like that one might have gotten bumped up as well. If these are going to get moved upwards, which it kind of looks like that's what's happening here, then I'll probably stay away from the Underdog board right now. I'll probably just focus on Prize Picks when they post it and hopefully be able to find some better undervalue. For now, let's go over here to pick 6 and take a look at what they're offering. I was looking at this before. I like this over on Cam Davis birdies for sure. This Eric Van Rooyen one stuck out. Both of these are top 50 birdie makers on the PGA Tour that are both projected at, but I think will be just slightly over that field average. If you look at the strokes board, I think it's a little bit more fair. They actually have guys posted lower than what we have on Underdog. So, like, for example, we have guys like McNeely that are 0.5 lower. Keith Mitchell is 0.5 lower on this site. But guys like Zalatoris are actually 0.5 higher over here on the pick 6. So these are some of the leans that I'd be looking at on the pick 6 side. Comparing them to sportsbook odds, I guess let's see what that looks like. So Zalatoris is at 69.5 and he's juiced over. Yeah, no, I have to say that these odds on DraftKings, I can't completely ignore them because they're sharp guys over there. Vegas, right? They don't build those casinos by losing money. Let's say that much. But I vehemently disagree with them, which is what it is. Sometimes you're going to disagree with the sports books. And frankly, I trust myself a little bit more than the odds. I have to say, though, it's nice when you have that confirmation bias with the sports books, right? Where you have a take on a slate, then the sports books agree with you. Like, that's great. That's a great feeling to have. It's not as great a feeling to see that they don't agree, but I'm not going to marry myself to these sportsbook odds because they've proven in the past that they're full of shit a lot of times, that they don't really know what they're talking about. So let me get a sip of my Coke here, and let's figure out what we're going to do. So the other categories I wanted to look through before we really fire on anything, let's look at their fairway board. I want to see what they've got posted over here. Caesars has a lot of the other categories on here. So Akshay 9.5 and juiced over. Tom Kim 10.5 juiced under. Ricky Fowler 9.5. He's pretty close to even money. And then Will Zalatoris is at 9.5 and juiced under. Okay. And let's look at these birdie lines. So birdie lines, you've got 4.5 for Michael Kim and he's juiced under. Akshay's at 4.5 and he's only minus 130 over. Okay, I would just tell you this right now, guys. This solidifies my take. There's no chance that these lines are going to end up being accurate. They aren't accounting for the wind change. They aren't accounting for the fact that it was maybe a little bit too soft out there for the players today. I mean, every announcer was confounded by the easy conditions, right? It was like, how is it playing not as easy as what we're used to seeing, right? It's playing a little bit stiffer over here towards 2024. Put it this way, if I could bet Akshay over 4.5 birdies and only with my minus 130 juice, I'd probably put 3 units on that. And again, I'm not trying to say that to like bet a nuke on that yourself or do anything irresponsible, but I'm just telling you that because I literally would. I'd put 3 units on that. Tom Kim, same thing. Minus 130 odds, I would hammer that. Cam Young, same thing. Minus 135 odds, I would absolutely hammer that. So it's good to see where they have these posted. It looks like all the sportsbooks seem to be in conjunction on this. We'll have to see where FanDuel ends up posting their birdie or better lines. They also usually post them over here for us. I don't know. Maybe we can find some value then, right? I don't know if Underdog's the best place for it because they actually have stuff posted lower than some of these other sites. But if Prize Picks does their usual thing and copies the DraftKings and the FanDuel boards, I think we might have some value to work with there. Unfortunately for Underdog, and this is just based on the stroke stuff that I was looking at, I think they've done a pretty decent job, actually, all things considered. Now, I still think the stuff getting bumped up is a mistake, right? So maybe we get some stuff bumped up and we can find some better value over here on Underdog. But as it stands right now, I personally think the better value is going to be on the Prize Pick side. So we'll have to see what comes with some of the movement here. I saw that they had some guys at 4.5, like a McNeely, for example, that I'd probably want to bet for the over. But they have a lot of the guys that with a 0.9x multiplier. So Keith Mitchell was another one I was eyeing, but he's 0.9x. Let's see. Who else? Ben Griffin, I believe, was also with a 0.9x multiplier. Kirk's actually at 5. So yeah, he's even higher than that. But you get the point, right? A lot of the guys I want to take for like an over at 4.5 birdies have a 0.9x multiplier over here in Underdog. So it makes it pretty close to unplayable in my opinion. So we're at least if they don't post fairway or green regulation props before we get off live stream here, I'm not going to enter anything on Underdog. I just think that there's going to be a lot better value and a lot better leans, in my opinion, for taking the positive stances on Prize Picks. So still nothing posted there. So I guess just to give you guys a game plan, if they do post things higher, which to give you guys a sense of what that would look like, as opposed to Akshay being at 68 strokes, I think there's a chance he's at like 68.5 or 69 strokes over there in Prize Picks. If they give me like a 69 strokes prop on Akshay, I would 100% take his under there. To give you an idea on a few other players, a 69.5 strokes line on Steven Yeager, and I would nuke that under. Now, I think more realistic, we'd probably get a 69 strokes line on him, which would be, I think, a better projection. But even then, I'd probably even be considering his under. Let's see what else. McNeely, maybe he's even at 69.5 or 70 strokes. Probably not 70, probably 69.5. But if we got a 69.5 on Mav, I'd probably be looking at that. A 69 on somebody like Tom Kim, and I'd probably be taking that under too. So hopefully that gives you an idea of like some of the prop lines I'm looking for. If they post them all at those lines, I'll probably take them under, right? If they post them a little bit lower, then we might have to think about it a little bit. So we did the pick 6 stuff. Underdog, unfortunately, just doesn't have the best value. There were a few, I have to admit, before we went on live stream, there were actually a few guys I thought were decent unders. Just based on looking at the sportsbook odds, though, I think we're going to get better lines elsewhere. So I guess to spill the beans, I didn't hate the idea of a Keith Mitchell under 69. I didn't hate the idea of a Mav McNeely under 69 strokes. The issue is, I think Prize Picks might post them 0.5 higher. So just the responsible thing to do for right now until we see that would be to probably not enter those two. And heck, there might be some slapdicks out there that are taking their overs over there on props. And if so, maybe they get bumped up to 69.5 and we get it that way. So that's what I'll say about the Underdog side. Sometimes the prudent move in doing props is to not enter anything at all, which I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. And I'm not the type of tell that is just going to give you guys random ass plays to enter. That's not ever my strategy or what I do. It's always going to be stuff that I think is worth entering. So let's see. Anything here on pick 6 to point out? I'm kind of just trying to spend maybe a few minutes here, waste a little bit of time, because I'm expecting a board to drop here in Prize Picks any second. Which speaking of, let's just check up on chat. It'd be a good like 5-minute window right here. I almost choked on my drink. Yikes. Where are we at? What are my thoughts on Davis? Looks like he's fighting for his game but can score. Yeah, he's very familiar here, being a past champion at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And realistically, even if you don't have your best stuff, you're going to see some guys shoot -4, -5 rounds. So I'm okay with it, Antonio. You know, it's a weak field event too, right? So even without his best stuff, he's better than most guys in the field. Of course, Bart, thanks for stopping by, my man. You hate Ryan Montgomery for first-round leader bets. Batia sniped you. Yeah, I saw somebody that had Batia for a first-round leader, but dude, those Ryan Montgomery numbers were 10 times better. So yeah, I was definitely rooting for you guys, the guys that had the higher numbers out there. Unfortunate. How many golfers make the cut? It is the top 65 in ties. Are you high? You might be. I don't know. But he said, why are Cam, Ricky, and Will 69.5 at plus money? I'm right there with you, bro. I don't get it either. I seriously don't. Especially this wind direction thing. And you guys may or may not have seen that. It was on the ESPN Plus coverage when Cam did that interview. I trust the players on that. Sportsbooks, you know, they have talented analysts, right? They have whole teams and whatnot. I trust Cam Young, though. Ricky is plus 120 for the under. Dude, honestly, plus money on any of those guys you mentioned make a whole bunch of sense. Everything is taken down for you on pick 6. Really? Might be a location based because let's see what it looks like on my end. Yeah, they're still up for me, so it might be location based for you. They're still up for me. You mean you're baffled the sportsbooks are thinking the course will play harder? Exactly. It played the hardest that it's played the last 5 years today, right? And they think it's going to get harder out there for round 2. I mean, even if it played like it did today, 69.5 on a lot of those players and plus money towards the under. Like you said, it makes me question myself too. Like, am I smoking too much reefer out here? Am I like looking at things the wrong way? Because I'm right there with you, man. I see it the same way. Let's see. Look at that. We wasted enough time to get a strokes board. And look at this. This is actually wild, guys. Oh my God. They have the board lower than Underdog. So they agree with me. So Underdog and Prize Picks agree with my sentiment here that the sports books are full of shit, right? Because they said, fuck your sportsbook lines, DraftKings. Fuck you, Caesars, FanDuel. We don't give a fuck, we don't give a F what you're posting out here. We're going to post our own damn strokes lines, right? Because look at this. Tom Kim is at 67.5. That's 2 strokes lower. Oh, God. Cam Young is 2 strokes lower. Keith is even 0.5. Oh, geez, Louise. You know what? Let them bump up all these strokes over here in Underdog. If we're going to really take anything out here for round 2, I mean, if these are going to be the boards and they're not going to move, I might not enter much out here for round 2. In fact, a lot of my exposure might just be fairway and green props. Because, I mean, those categories, you can usually still find an advantage even with some sharp pricing. It looks like I agree with all their takes on here. And I hate to say it, that they're on top of things. They're sharp on this. Like having guys at 5 birdies that are pretty decent birdie makers, I tend to agree with. The guys they have at 4.5 are guys that kind of struggle with the flat stick. So unfortunate, but they did not give us the higher strokes lines that I was hoping for. And in fact, like I said, if you compare them to the Underdog lines, they're actually lower in a few cases, which if you were looking at the sportsbook lines, you probably would have expected the exact opposite. So if you're watching this and you have access to Underdog Prize Picks, you're probably shit out of luck because, hell, I don't see anything I want to enter right now. The people that really have it good right now, if you have access to sportsbooks and like Underdog Prize Picks, hammer the hell out of these unders. The ones, especially like the unders on here that are plus money, like Minwoo at minus 160. I mean, it's hard to really get that much value on a minus 160 spot, right? But these ones that are like plus 100 or even money towards the under, even like a Cam Davis here, Ben Griffin at plus 100. Taylor Moore luck sacked the ever-living fuck out of it. Do not play him for an under. He's probably the one guy I'd avoid. But like even a Cam Young with this minus 145 juice, like I would probably eat the minus 145 and just play Cameron Young straight up. So if you have access to these sports books, which Hard Rock Bet doesn't post strokes lines, which is just unfortunate. It's a market I'm sure they'd get a bunch of action on if they decided to post it eventually. I'd be absolutely nuking some of these on here. So whether it's FanDuel's got the same stuff posted. So if we go over here to round score, you'll see a lot of that there too. So look at that, minus 140 now. Look at that. It's actually getting bet up. That is fucking wild. There are more people taking the over than the under on these props. Okay, so let's circle back on this. Here's why I shake my head so much, guys. Conditions are going to get easier. I can tell you that definitively. They'll be easier for round 2. Probably at least a stroke and a half under par. What people fail to realize, and I guess the sports books have failed to realize, is that this isn't a signature event. This isn't the Travelers. This isn't even a U.S. Open where you have a strong field. You have your world's top players. This is the Rocket Mortgage with a whole bunch of slapdicks. In fact, you've got like 6 amateurs in the field. You've got Tim Wilkinson, who's like 45 and working for PGA Tour Live out there in the field this week. And no hate to my boy Wilk. He's an absolute boss. Love him over there on the ESPN Plus coverage. However, this field, your top-end players are so much better than your average player here. It's not even close. Like typically, a guy like Akshay, right, is like an above-average guy. He's not that much better than your typical player. In this slapdick level of field, I mean, he's way better than your average. He's probably on average going to gain at least 2.5 strokes to the field. So if the scoring average is going to be 1.5 under par, you don't use Akshay's normal baseline at this kind of event, right? You have to use a boosted baseline because everyone else in the field sucks, right? You're comparing him to players that suck, right? Compared to the Travelers Championship from the week before, which is why I think the sports books are just so out of tune with this stuff. For example, with somebody like a Tom Kim, who's your best player in the field when it comes to talent level, I think pretty much every betting market would tell you that, right? Tom Kim is going to gain at least 2 strokes to the field in this kind of field, if not closer to 3. If the scoring average is 1.5 under par, and he's gaining 3 strokes to the field. Let's even tone it down a bit and say it's just 2.5 strokes to the field, right? That's a 68 score right there. That's -4, right? Gaining 2.5 strokes to the field on a scoring average that's already 1.5 under par. How the hell is he at a 69.5 stroke line? That's my question. How? Like, seriously, I don't understand. Like, they must be smoking some crack over there or something, over there at the DraftKings headquarters, because it makes absolutely no sense. Like, they're a stroke better than the expected scoring average. Like, you think that guys like Akshay's baseline is gaining a stroke to this field? Tom Kim, especially, you think his baseline is gaining a stroke? It makes literally no sense. So that's what I'll say. If you have access to these sports books, I agree with the prize picks and underdog lines. I would be absolutely hammering them. So unfortunately, I can't do that yet. I'm going to have to wait for the fairway and green stuff to post, to go over there and post stuff for my Patreon page. But yeah, honestly, I'm sure if I deep dive these, I might be able to find a few spots to take like overs for birdies, but it's looking like pretty tight pricing. Let's see. So they posted some fairway stuff on prize picks. They do have some 13.5 still. So if we can find a few elite tier iron players at 13.5, it looks like we could take some overs, but unfortunately, no elite tier guys are at 13.5, at least on prize picks. Let's look at fairways. So fairways have got a very similar board to what we had in round 1, and nothing that really sticks out there initially. So yeah, they must have gotten killed round 1 or something, which wouldn't have surprised me with the scoring that we had. I know they got killed at the Travelers when it came to some of their prop exposure. So these sites are trying to get ahead of it a little bit. They've gone a little bit too complacent, in my opinion, with just going out there and copying the sportsbook lines. You saw people take advantage of that at the Travelers. So I think that's why you're starting to see this different stance from Underdog and prize picks. And unfortunately, at least for this slate, it can change day to day, right? Just because they get it right today does not mean they're going to get it right tomorrow. Unfortunately for today, I think they got it right. All right, let's catch up on Chad, then hop on out of here, guys. Yeah, board dropped. Saw that. Your pick 6 board is fine. Okay, yeah, so it's probably just a location thing for Harden. You got Cam Davis under 69.5 at plus 110. Yeah, dude, frankly, if I had access, I'd probably be putting 2-unit bets on anyone with a pulse. Now, usually guys with a course history, right, your top 8, 9K players are the guys I'd be looking for that. But yeah, anyone with a pulse, man, I'd be taken for that. Pat said greens regulation and fairways over a certain number. Yeah, he probably is taking those too. It's a soft course. I think it makes a lot of sense. So we'll have to see what the pricing looks like on Underdog. Hopefully they post stuff for the entire field. Can I send you money and you'll bet these lines for you? Hey, I can't answer this on live stream, right? But hit me up and I guess we'll chat about it, Antonio. All right, guys, that's all I've got for the live stream. Hopefully you guys feel a little bit more prepared for your action for tomorrow and are ready to get after it for Friday's action. Go ahead, smash the like button if you haven't already. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel if you haven't as well. So you don't miss any of the content to come. Rounds 3 and 4 will be doing the same thing. So going over Showdown and prop content to come. So if you want to see when I'm going live, don't want to miss those, make sure to go ahead and smash that subscribe button and go ahead and join the Patreon page if you want access to all of my content. On there is where I post those Showdown spreadsheets that I was going through before. On there is where I've got my entire player pool, projections, ownership for everyone in the field. So if you want my full take, my full exposure out there for Showdown, make sure to check it out, my Patreon for that. And of course, for all the different prop slips that I'm entering. Unfortunately, because of when we're going live, we don't have the entire board to look at, or else you'd probably have a few slips to go out there and give to you. So later on, I'll be posting all my prop exposure for my Patreon members that are going out there and getting to myself. On top of that, I also post those averages that you saw there in the live stream to give you guys the most up-to-date research and information on the board. So Patreon page is the way to access all that information. And there's a link to that down there in the description of the video. Mentioned our sponsors, the Ship It Nation, before. Make sure to check them out if you guys haven't already. And I forgot to mention this in the intro. Use code Luke10 for any discount over there at Ship It Nation for 10% off. So it gives your boy a kickback, gives you that discounted membership and all the tools and wonderful stuff that Ship It Nation has to offer. That's all I've got, guys. Appreciate your content. Appreciate you guys stopping by for all the content. You can tell I'm starting to get cooked here towards the end of the live stream, right? It's a long day, a lot of talking, a lot of analysis. Let's sit back, kick back, and get ready to build some lineups.